Ever wonder how a country gets rich? Like, what's the secret sauce?
Yeah.
Today's deep dive might just have the answer, and spoiler alert, it involves a lot more diplomas than you might think. We're diving into this fascinating research paper, Degrees of Success.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it's got me rethinking everything I thought I knew about the value of education.
What's so intriguing about this paper is that it goes beyond just saying education is good. It connects the dots between individual learning and a nation's overall wealth, productivity, even its future prospects.
Okay, let's unpack this. They start with this analogy that really hooked me. They compare a college degree to a bumblebee.
It's brilliant when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, it's easy to dismiss the value of a single bee.
Right.
You see one buzzing around, maybe you get some honey.
Right.
But what's the big deal, right?
I'll admit, I was thinking along those lines, honey's great and all, but a whole degree, that's a bit more than a teaspoon of sweetness. And that's their point. Just like we underestimate a bee's importance, we often miss the bigger picture when it comes to education. Bees are essential for the entire food chain, for pollination, for the whole ecosystem.
So you're saying education is kind of like the bee of a nation's success. It's not just about personal gain, it's about investing in the whole system.
Precisely.
And the research backs this up. For instance, the paper highlights that, on average, someone with a bachelor's degree earns a whopping $2.8 million more over their lifetime compared to someone without one.
Wow, that's a staggering figure. That's like adding an extra high-paying job to your life just by getting a degree. But I'm sure it's not quite as simple as saying, get a degree, become a millionaire.
Right.
There must be more to it.
Absolutely. It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's crucial to remember that correlation doesn't equal causation.
Right.
Just because there's a link between higher education levels and higher earning potential doesn't mean one automatically causes the other.
That makes me think about, well, imagine someone who's naturally a go-getter, right? They might be more likely to pursue a degree A and D, be successful in their career, regardless of the education itself.
That's a great example. It highlights the complexity of these issues. However, the data still strongly suggests a powerful connection between education and economic success, both on an individual and national scale.
Which then has that ripple effect we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
More money earned often translates to more money to spend, to invest, to support businesses. It all adds up.
Precisely.
And that's where the idea of national wealth comes into play. The study points to university endowment funds, particularly in the U.S., as a fascinating clue to how this all works on a larger scale.
Okay, so we're talking big money now. You know, those endowments that are always making headlines.
Yeah.
Harvard alone is practically its own country, right?
Well, their endowment is actually larger than the GDP of many countries. And that's a key takeaway here. These substantial endowments demonstrate how education can generate long-term wealth that then gets reinvested back into society, creating a kind of virtuous cycle.
It's like compound interest, but for knowledge. Fascinating. So it's not just about individual graduates earning more. It's about the institutions themselves becoming these powerhouses of resources that can further fuel growth and innovation.
Exactly. And it's important to note that these endowments don't just exist in a vacuum. They often fund groundbreaking research, provide scholarships to deserving students, and attract top talent to universities, all of which benefit society as a whole.
That's a great point. It shows how interconnected it all is.
Yeah.
But, and I think this is crucial, the paper doesn't just stop at dollars and cents, right? It goes beyond saying a nation is wealthy just because it has a high GDP.
You're absolutely right. The source emphasizes that education's impact extends far beyond purely financial metrics. We're talking about a more productive workforce, a healthier population, a society that's better equipped to solve complex problems and drive innovation.
Okay, so let's dive into that a bit deeper. What are some of the less obvious ways that education makes a nation wealthier in those areas? I'm curious to hear more about those less obvious benefits. What are some concrete examples from the research?
Well, for one, they highlight a direct correlation between a nation's average level of education and its overall GDP. It makes sense when you think about it. A more educated workforce tends to be more innovative, adaptable, and productive.
That tracks with what they were saying about endowments, too. Those institutions become hubs for attracting talent and generating new ideas, which then spills out into the economy as a whole.
Exactly.
And a great example of that is the innovation factor. The paper brings up companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft. These powerhouses of invention were all founded by college graduates.
It makes you wonder how many brilliant ideas are out there, how much potential is untapped, simply because people don't have access to that same level of education.
That's a point the source really drives home. They challenge the idea that education is too expensive by arguing that, on the contrary, we can't afford not to invest in it.
That's a bold statement. So break that down for us. What's their reasoning there?
It goes back to those long-term benefits we've been discussing, both for individuals and for society as a whole. Education isn't just an expense, it's an investment in a better future. They argue that the returns, in terms of economic growth, reduce crime rates, improve public health, and a more engaged citizenry far outweigh the initial costs.
It's like that old saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But in this case, it's more like educate a generation and you nourish a nation for generations to come.
Exactly.
And speaking of inspiring stories about the transformative power of education, the paper shares a really compelling account from one of the co-authors, Dr. Darlington Johnson.
Oh, yes. His story was incredible. For those who haven't gotten to that part yet, he overcame almost impossible circumstances in Liberia to pursue higher education, eventually earning multiple degrees.
It's a perfect example of how education can empower individuals to not only transform their own lives, but also lift up their communities and even entire nations.
Right. It really highlights that education is a miracle idea.
Yeah.
He went on to achieve amazing things, impacting communities all over the world, and it all stems from that initial pursuit of knowledge.
And he's now deeply involved in building a university in Liberia, right? To bring those same opportunities to others. Talk about paying it forward.
Exactly. Which, if we connect it back to our earlier discussion about endowments and long-term wealth creation, it shows how that cycle begins. One person's dedication to education has the potential to create a ripple effect that benefits countless others.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson's story is a powerful reminder that education isn't just about climbing the economic ladder. It's about unlocking human potential on a personal and societal level.
It's about empowering people to create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that's something we can all get behind. It's really inspiring to see how one person's commitment to education can have such a far-reaching impact.
It really highlights how investing in education is about so much more than just individual gain. It's about investing in human potential, in the possibility of a brighter future for everyone.
It's like this hidden network of benefits, right? Like, sure, I directly benefit from my own education, but it also creates a ripple effect that lifts up the entire community.
Exactly.
And that's a really crucial takeaway from this deep dive. We often get caught up in thinking about education in very individualistic terms. What will this degree do for me? But this paper really pushes us to think bigger, to see the collective impact.
It's like, yes, invest in yourself, absolutely.
Yeah.
But also invest in the idea of an educated society, because that benefits everyone in ways we might not even be able to fully measure.
Precisely. It's about fostering that wealthy mindset we were talking about earlier, but on a societal scale.
And finding ways to make sure everyone has access to those opportunities, right? Because that's where the real wealth lies, in the potential of every single person to learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And, that sparked a thought for me. The source mainly focuses on formal education, like college degrees, but it got me thinking about the value of lifelong learning, of seeking knowledge and growth beyond traditional institutions.
Ooh, that's a good point. So it's not just about getting that piece of paper. It's about cultivating a mindset of curiosity, of always wanting to learn and expand your understanding of the world.
Exactly.
And that's something we can all do regardless of our background or formal educational attainment. We can all choose to invest in our own growth and, in doing so, contribute to a wealthier, more vibrant, and more innovative world.
I love that. So it's like this call to action, right? To not just consume this information, but to really embody it, to make a conscious effort to embrace lifelong learning, both for ourselves and for the collective good. That's what makes this kind of research so powerful. It's not just about understanding the world as it is, but about using that understanding to create the world as it could be.
Beautifully said. And on that inspiring note, I think we've done our deep dive for the day. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey into the fascinating connection between education and national wealth. And remember, the pursuit of knowledge doesn't stop here. What will you learn today?